Hello and welcome to another Divinity Original Sin video. This is going to be the final Geomancer tier list that I do. I've promised this many times now in my other tier lists that I've got going on at the same time that this will be the final ones that I do put out. So let's get straight into it. As you can see on the left hand side, you've got the list ranking going from unique being the best and common being the worst. So let's start off with the one I think we all can definitely agree on, and that is Pyro Classic Eruption is a common spell. I'm joking. Pyro Classic Eruption is probably the most powerful spell in the game. It's 300% damage per sludge bomb, Pokemon reference, which can do overlapping damage. So yeah, it is the most powerful spell in the game, and it's a very, very easy start to put this one into unique tier. We're going to go with the Poisonous Skin straight in the common, like I've referenced in other videos. The skins provide like 100% resistance, but they are not really needed. They're redundant, and on top of that, they cost you source points in order to use them. Not worth at all. I think this one's called Living Wall. The biggest heap of trash in the entire game. It goes straight into the common. All it does is just put up a wall to deny enemies, but at the point in the game you get it, which is at level 16, everybody's basically got jumps at that point, so it just doesn't really do anything. Okay. Siphon Poison straight into the common. It's far inferior to the Venom Coating, and it's reliant on poison surfaces. I mean, you can use clouds too, but it's just reliant on that. But yeah, it's just far inferior to Venom Coating. Not worth using at all. Straight into the common. We've got the Oily Carapace and the Mass one. Both of them for me belong in common. The Mass is a lot worse in the singular one. The reasons why I don't like this and I don't rate it is it restores armor, which is not ideal. It requires oil to be around you, and it's dependent on the amount of oil around you. So it's only under a certain circumstance that you're actually able to return armor to yourself. But yeah, I just don't like the fact that it requires like certain boxes to be ticked in order to use them, and I just think the other options are superior. I think increasing your total armor is a lot better than restoring. Besides, I guess when I'm fighting, oil doesn't really tend to stay on the battlefield for too long when you're using fire as well, or when your enemies do it too. So there's always a lot of potential problems with these. So yeah, for me, it's not worth the memory. It's just not worth bothering in my view. There is another armor restore here. It's called Mending Metal. I again don't personally use this. I don't think it's very good, but I think it's a little bit more functionable than the Carapaces. So this one works like an aura, works over numerous turns. It does restore minimal physical armor. It's a lot better to use in the early game, whereas in the late game it will drop off completely because that armor that's restored isn't really going to do much for you, to be honest. But yeah, it's restoring armor, so it's not the best. You're not exactly going to see 100% value from this because you need all your teammates taking physical damage. But yeah, I think it's better than the previous ones I just spoke about, but it's still not a great option in my opinion. So it's in the uncommon. Let's go to turn to oil. Turn to oil I don't think is particularly useful. If you're looking to get elemental affinity, it's a lot better to use Contamination. The reason being is because turn to oil will remove the haste or slow you. Contamination, you're not going to get that issue. And if you're trying to, like, the way I see it is, yes, I'm sure there's like tricky ways of actually using turn oil and then like multi-crossing different elements. But for me personally, like when I play the game, I like doing things that work in tandem with each other. So if I have a Hydra and Air Mage, I would much rather pair up a Hydra Air Mage than a Geo Pyro, because they're both working towards the same goals and they both excel in the same area. So if you want to flip around surfaces and mess around with that, sure, it could be of somewhat use, but I don't play like that because I think it's subpar. So for me, I don't see any value in it whatsoever, so it will go into the common. Let's touch on Dust Blast. Dust Blast, for me, is a unique spell. I think it's that good. 3 AP, 1 source point. Get this at level 9. Really nice. Works in the same way as Pyro Classic Eruption, in that you can overlap damage. So if you have, say, 2 enemies on top of each other, it will hit both of those enemies twice. It's 100% damage, whereas the eruption's 300%, so obviously the damage is far inferior, but it works in the same way, which means that even though it's 100%, if you got 3-4 enemies stacked on top of each other, you're getting massive damage for a 1 source ability, which is really, really good. So I think in terms of the value, it's probably a unique tier. And let's touch on Poison Wave. So it does 100% damage for 2 AP, makes you immune to Earth, which isn't a really major deal, to be honest. It's one of those abilities that kind of explodes from you, for lack of better words. So kind of battle mage, if you like. And if you've watched other videos of mine, I don't really rate them at all. I don't like the battle mage types because they don't get the bonuses from high ground. So yeah, for me, so it does 100% damage, poison damage, which is, you know, okay, but it's not really something I would be looking at building or doing, because it just would go against my nature of playing the game. Like, if I'm playing a mage, if there's a chance to get on high ground, I want to be on high ground and away from the enemies. This thing promotes the opposite to that, and therefore I would completely write it off. But, you know, if you want to play in that way, I suppose you could make use of it. But for me, it's common, but I guess for some people who want to play that playstyle, it would have a use. But for me, I think it's wasted. Like, it's waste. It's a waste. Contamination. Poison Wave and Contamination is very, very similar. It's like it works in the same way that the spell casts from you and kind of like sprays outwards. This one's worth 1 AP, does 55% damage, but again, it's got the same trouble as Poison Wave. However, the one saving grace and useful bit about this spell is that it does give you elemental affinity. So ideally, if you're playing, say, someone like Sibyl or someone like that, you cast your Flesh Sacrifice and then you use Contamination to turn that blood into poison. So it's really useful in fights where you can't set surfaces beforehand. Otherwise, you're not really going to be using this. So I think for those moments where it will help you gain elemental affinity, it has a use. But besides that, I wouldn't really be using this. Impalement, legendary, straight into the legendary tier. 100% damage for 2 AP. You pick this up from level 4, so long-term use. Really good large AoE radius. It cripples, which isn't such a big thing. Slows. And it's just really easy to use. Walls and stuff aren't a problem. Neither are ramps, so it's really good way to use it, and it's really good AoE damage. Very solid ability. Gonna do Fossil Strike next. Fossil Strike falls into Epic for me. Inferior to Impalement in terms of damage and the AoE radius, so it's in the tier below. And we're gonna have Throw Dust in the Epic tier as well. Again, slight damage down on the Fossil Strike, but it does come with a little bit of crowd control, and sometimes the surface clearing can be quite useful, so it's in the Epic. Next we got Reactive Armor. Pretty much useless on the whole. I suppose there's really one build that you would use this, and it's particularly focused on armor, as you could imagine. Really suits sword and shield type because they have more armor, and it allows the reactive armor to do more damage. It used to be a lot stronger, but I didn't actually play the game at that point, so I can't really reference to how strong, but I know that it got significantly nerfed, and yeah, for what it does now, it's more of a gimmick build than a traditional one, so I'd say it's more for fun. So since that the tier list is based around on what's optimal and what's good, unfortunately it falls in the common. But you can make this work in like a gimmicky, armor-focused, armor buffing character. Maybe using like overpower, you know. But yeah, for me it's part of a gimmicky build, so for me it's in common. Earthquake I think is terrible. I think this, I don't know why, but I think people seem to rate this spell, and I think it's horrible. I've never used it. It does 100% damage for 3 AP, which is off-putting in itself, but I think most people use it inside of mixed parties because even though it does magic damage, the crowd control is pretty incredible, but it's based around physical armor. So it's kind of like I just never really understood the point of it. Like you're doing magic damage, but you're wanting to crowd control physical damage, which means that in order to make it really work, you're going to be doing magic damage from the earthquake, physical crowd control, which means that if you want to crowd control, you need to have done physical damage, so you're kind of eking away at both armor types, and it makes no sense. Makes no sense to me. But yeah, so for that reason, don't like it. Don't like the damage. The damage is bad, and it's just not enough to justify using it, honestly. But that's just me. So for me, it's in the common. I wouldn't bother with this at all. Okay. Corrosive touch and corrosive spray. Corrosive touch and corrosive spray. Okay, I'd say very early game corrosive spray might see some use on the necromancers because of the lack of spells. I really hate that they are such short range, more so the touch, you have to get right up and close. I don't really like those abilities. Already touched on the reason why. And the reason being is that it lacks, well, for these ones, they lack damage, they just eat at the armor, but they lack the potential to gain the huntsman abilities. Huntsman bonus damage, so I don't like them. So I guess if you're playing like a necromancer in the early game, you might see this and you might use it. You may very well use it, so I guess it can go in the uncommon. I don't really like it though, personally. And then corrosive spray, I believe it's like 8 meters, so it's relatively short range. With it being 8 meters, I'm pretty sure that you can't use this on high ground. Kind of works like Cone of the Cold, like a short cone. I mean, I think it's like something like that. Only eats at the armor. I believe this one atrophies enemies as well as causes acid. But yeah, I don't like that it requires source. I believe it requires 2 AP as well. I'm pretty sure it does. But so already things are kind of going against using it, but then again, at that sort of stage, you are in the middle of the game, you've got better options. As a necromancer, you're using your corpse explosions, you're using your grasp of the starved, you're soon moving on to, you know, bloodstorm. You just don't see a time or place for it, honestly. So for me, this one belongs in the common, whereas at least in the early stages of the game, on the necromancer, you might cop a feel of the corrosive touch. I personally don't though, but I kind of get why some people might use it. So it is uncommon. So the spray is uncommon, touch is in the uncommon. Okay, poison dart, pretty straightforward for me, goes in the rare. For me personally, I drop this at level 4 in terms of using it in combat. The way I used it mostly was for elemental affinity, just easy access. It's 100% damage, but it may as well be single target. Like the AoE is like 1 meter explode, which is tiny. I think it's the same size as the Searing Daggers. So yeah, it's standard damage, very, very small. It might as well be single target, but it's nice for getting elemental affinity. So I would probably put it in the rare. We got acid spores, which suffers the problem that some of our spells suffer from, and it's just an inferior choice. So you can get this at level 13, I think. But if you compare it to Pyro Classic Eruption, Pyro Classic is 3 AP, Acid Spores is 2 AP, massively inferior. So in terms of AP in the source, you're always going to do Pyro Classic eruption first, no matter what, pretty much, unless an enemy has like super high earth resistance, and I can't really think off the top of my head many enemies that actually do. So you're never going to use acid spores in that situation. And I think even comparing it to Dust Blast, I mean, let's think, right? So each spore does 90%, so you can do 270% damage for 3 AP, 2 source points. Now we look at the Dust Blast is 3 AP, 1 source point. If you're hitting 3 enemies, even Dust Blast is stronger than this. So at no point are you even considering using this before Blast or Eruption. So because of how expensive it is, you'll never use it. You will literally never ever use it. So do you put it in common? Do you put it in uncommon? Like, the spell itself is not bad. Like, it's not common, right? But you'll never use it. So for me, like with spells like that, I tend to just put in the uncommon. Again, not because it's bad, but because there's no reason to use it. But at the same time, it's not useless. Like, the spell's not useless like some of these other ones. But I think uncommon for me is the right place for it. You won't use it, but it's not useless, which sounds really silly saying it like that. But hopefully my point's getting across. There's no reason to use it, but it doesn't mean like it's a bad spell. There we go. Okay. Venom Coating. Venom Coating goes straight into the legendary. I really like this spell. It scales with Geomancer. It gets stronger throughout the game. I really like it. It costs 1 AP, 1 Geo and Scoundrel. Easy to get. I think the class that benefits the most from Venom Coating is like a Ranger, because it applies to all their magical arrows. You can convert the poison into physical if you wanted to. So there's real benefit to it, benefit to using it and getting really good value from it. You could use it with like a Spark Master, but I prefer not to do that, to be honest. But it's a possibility because it is magic damage upon magic damage. But the problem that the Spark Master would have is that the Ranger can convert it to whatever damage type they need. You can't do that being a Master of Sparks user, and if you're against undead enemies, then you're as good as healing them. So, but yeah, but for Huntsman in particular, it's amazing. I think there's some really cool things you could do it as a rogue. Like, you can use it with Sawtooth Knife. You can use it after you've applied decaying on an undead. So you're healing them technically, but you're doing physical damage. So there's that also to play around with if you've not thought about that before. So yeah, but mostly for the Huntsman, it's legendary. Okay, Fortify. Fortify. It's a tricky one because it is a very nice spell. 1 AP, 1 Geo, really easy to get. It protects physical armor, increases it, which is obviously a good thing. It's a ranged spell, also good. It does remove some nasties, but not the really terrible nasties. It can deny teleportation, which can be good, but can be bad if you want to use Never Swap or teleport your own teammate for whatever reason, so you have to consider that also. So all in all, it is a very good spell, but the reason why it's marked down a little bit in the tier list is simply just because it is a defensive, and offensive spells or offensive buffs are going to be ranked higher in this game simply because offense is the best defense.
There's nothing more powerful than you.
We got ourselves an advert, guys. I love this. Have I actually got through the entire... No. Mid-advert. Brilliant. Fantastic. There we go. This is play there. Yeah, so what was I saying? I was talking about Fortify, yeah. So offense is the best defense. It's a good spell. It's a good spell, but I think if you're thinking like, if I'm thinking of a really good defensive spell, I would think of Armor Frost. Just simply because it protects you from harder crowd controls, as well as being an increase to your magic armor. So for me, there's a superior use for it, whereas Fortify, like, it does protect you from stuff, protect you from certain nasties, but they're not as important as the ones with the Armor Frost, in my view. So Fortify is in rare for me. Venom Aura. Now, I'm not talking about Venom Aura that you would get from Source Orb. I'm talking about as if you had to put it in and get it from a memory slot, because you know that's part of the expense to having these spells like memory. So for two memory, 2 Geo, 2 Scoundrel. It's really good. It's really good, really nice for magic parties, but you got to think about who's going to be getting the benefit of using this. Your ranger, your sparkling swings, your incarnates. Is your ranger going to be in range of the aura? I'm not so sure. So you got to consider how many people is actually going to benefit from this, and I don't think it's going to be all that many. I mean, if you're running like something crazy, like multiple hunters or multiple sparking swings, sure, it's gonna have better value. But typically, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I like to have like one of each. If unless it makes complete sense not to do so. But yeah, having considered that, not all the party members are going to be getting this. It's quite expensive to have, and it's 2 AP and Source. I don't think it's as good as Venom Coating. So I'd probably put it in rare. I think that's probably on balance the best place to put it. Okay, and lastly we have Worm Tremor. Cost 3 AP, get this at level 4. You need Torture to make this work. The damage on it is pitiful. The damage over time on it is quite pitiful. But the lockdown is very, very, very nice. It roots enemies for like 2-3 turns. They can still act, but they just can't move. They can't jump. They can backlash, but they can't jump. So you can move your enemies and then block them down, keeping them in AoE range, so it will increase your overall damage. Do you always need to use this? The answer is no, but it's makes things a lot more manageable in the fight. It gives you that element of control. So for me, it's probably a divine, because if you can, it allows you to keep enemies together, and also it is, even though it's a soft crowd control, it can really protect you, like from melee units in particular, or you can jump outside of range that it can't actually act against you. But yeah, the minor bonuses, the minor damage is a bonus, but I think the crowd control itself is really excellent, and it's really useful right from level 4. So I'd probably say it's a divine spell, personally. So to conclude, we have Pyro Classic Eruption and Dust Blast in Unique, Worm Tremor in Divine, Venom Coating and Impalement in Legendary, Fossil Strike and Throw Dust in Epic, Fortify, Poison Dart, Venom Coating Aura in Rare. Uncommon has Mend Metal, Contamination, Acid Spores, and Corrosive Touch. And in common has the Poison Skin, Living Wool, Siphon Poison, Oily Carapace, Mass Oily, Turn to Oil, Poison Wave, Reactive Armor, Earthquake, and Corrosive Spray. As always, feel free to comment down below, and as ever, thank you for watching the video. See you guys in the next one.